What if you reach the top and still feel hollow? What if you gain the world but lose your soul's anchor? We chase meaning in money, applause, beauty, knowledge. But in the quiet, when no one's around, a question rises like smoke in the dark. If everything ends, then why live at all? This isn't doubt. It's honesty, and the Bible doesn't run from it. The book of Ecclesiastes looks straight into the abyss and dares to say, meaningless, meaningless. Everything is meaningless. But that isn't despair. It's a doorway, a sacred pause. Before you wake up, before you realize, maybe life's not about having more, but seeing deeper. Maybe the meaning you've been looking for was never in the things you chased, but in the one who never fades. Why this matters. That question, the one that haunts the quiet corners of your soul. You're not the only one asking it. It echoed through the halls of a mansion in the hills, where a man, respected, wealthy, admired, sat alone and wept, not because he failed, but because he succeeded and still felt lost. He had the world at his feet, but nothing grounding his heart. And that's when the wisdom of Ecclesiastes hits different. Because centuries ago, another man stood at the same cliff edge, a king, a thinker, a soul searcher, and he wrote these words: meaningless, meaningless. Everything is meaningless. But listen carefully. He wasn't giving up. He wasn't spiraling into despair. He was peeling back the illusion, stripping life down to its raw, aching core, so we could finally see what never fades. This book doesn't offer comfort wrapped in cliches. It offers clarity, and maybe that's what we need most. Because only when the surface breaks can the light begin to pour in. 1. Meaningless, meaningless. Facing the void to find what's real. The book of Ecclesiastes begins with a statement that stops you in your tracks. Meaningless, meaningless. Everything is meaningless. It doesn't start with comfort. It starts with honesty. And that honesty can feel uncomfortable. Because deep down, we've all felt it. You work hard, you build, you succeed, and still, something inside you feels empty. Why? This is not the voice of someone who failed. It's the voice of someone who had it all. King Solomon had wealth, wisdom, power, and pleasure. He reached every goal, but still asked, is this it? And maybe you've been there too. Maybe you've checked every box, but your soul still feels restless. Ecclesiastes gives you permission to admit that, to say out loud what we often keep inside. I have everything, but I feel like I have nothing. But this isn't the end of the story. It's the beginning of something deeper. When Solomon says everything is meaningless, he's not giving up. He's clearing the clutter. He's showing us that the things we chase, status, possessions, achievements, can never give us lasting meaning. They don't satisfy the soul. They only distract it. And that moment, when you realize this, is not a breakdown. It's a breakthrough. Because when everything feels empty, God is inviting you to see what truly matters. Real-life application. Take a step back from the chase, pause for a moment, turn off the noise, and ask yourself honestly, what am I working so hard for? What do I believe will finally make me feel whole? Don't judge the answer, just notice it. Sit with it. This is where meaning begins. Not in doing more, but in listening deeper. Spiritual practice. Take a notebook. Write down 5 things you're currently pursuing. They can be goals, dreams, or responsibilities. Then ask for each one. Why does this matter to me? Keep asking why again and again until you reach a place of silence. In that silence, Don't rush to fill the gap. Let it be still. Let God speak. Because sometimes, when the noise finally fades, truth begins to rise. 2. The emptiness of having it all. Solomon had everything, not in theory, in reality. He built palaces that shimmered with gold. He filled gardens with exotic trees and fountains. He drank the finest wines. His wealth was beyond counting. His influence stretched far and wide. He was admired, feared, envied, and obeyed. He didn't just taste life, he feasted on it. Every desire of the flesh, he explored. Every pleasure of the eye, he owned. Every form of status and power, he commanded. And yet, after it all, he sat down and wrote these haunting words. Everything I toiled to achieve was meaningless, a chasing after the wind. How can someone who had everything feel like he had nothing? The truth is sobering, but freeing. Because if Solomon, the richest and wisest man of his time, couldn't find fulfillment in abundance, maybe we were never meant to look for meaning there in the first place. Our world doesn't want us to hear that. It keeps whispering, you just need more. More money, more success, more admiration, more comfort, more likes, more control. And so we keep reaching and spending and running. But inside, the ache remains. Why? Because our souls were never meant to be fed by things that fade. Solomon's voice is ancient, but his message is urgent, now more than ever. You will never be filled by what was never meant to satisfy you. So what should we pursue instead? Solomon doesn't just expose the lie. He points us back to what lasts: faith, trust, integrity, relationships rooted in love, moments of stillness with God, the quiet joy of giving instead of getting. These are the things that fill the soul, because they are not built on sand. They are built on eternity. Real-life application. Here's one way to start. Choose one day this week as your material detox day. On that day, no online shopping, no spending, no chasing deals or upgrades. Turn off the ads. Silence the pressure to acquire more. Instead, just live. Simply, quietly, with intention. Make space to feel what you usually distract yourself from. Make space to be present with God. You'll be surprised, not by what you lack, but by how little you actually need to feel whole. Spiritual practice. On your detox day, set aside a time of stillness, 15, maybe 20 minutes. Sit in a quiet place, take a deep breath, and ask your soul, what have I been trying to buy that only God can give? Let that question settle. Then ask another, where in my life am I consuming when I should be planting? Because life isn't about accumulation, it's about cultivation. You can't take your wealth with you, but you can leave behind seeds of love, moments of truth, acts of grace, and those will echo into eternity. 3. A time for everything. The wisdom of living in season. Ecclesiastes doesn't just talk about meaning, it also speaks to timing. The often overlooked truth that life has seasons, and wisdom is knowing what belongs where. There is a time for everything, and a season for every activity under the heavens. These words aren't poetic fluff. They are spiritual strategy. Because one of the greatest causes of frustration in life is not doing the wrong thing, but doing the right thing at the wrong time. You can love deeply, but if it's not the season for closeness, it leads to heartbreak. You can launch a bold idea, but if it's not the season for building, it falls apart. You can pray and work and strive, but if it's a season of waiting, all your effort will feel like failure. It's not because you're broken. It's because you're rushing a harvest that hasn't been planted yet. And this is where many souls burn out. They confuse movement with maturity. progress with purpose. They measure their growth by speed, when God is shaping their depth. Because in His wisdom, God doesn't only teach through miracles. He also teaches through delay, through pauses, through silence. The world says, push harder, be faster, outpace everyone. But Ecclesiastes whispers a deeper truth. There is a time to plant and a time to uproot, a time to be silent and a time to speak. Not every season is for action. Some seasons are for observation. Some are for surrender. Some are for learning how to rest without guilt. Real-life application. If you feel out of rhythm lately, if your efforts feel heavy, your plans unclear, your heart tired, don't assume you're failing. Maybe you're just fighting the wrong season. Pause and ask God, what time is it in my soul? Don't move based on pressure. Move based on peace. When you live in alignment with God's timing, you will feel lighter, not because life is easier, but because you've stopped swimming against the current of heaven. Spiritual practice. Find a moment this week, a quiet pocket of time. Sit with a notebook and write, "This is the season I believe I'm in." Describe it. Is it a season of pruning, of planting, of being hidden, of blooming? Then write one sentence to define how you'll live differently because of that awareness. It could be, I will stop forcing answers and start listening more. I will allow myself to rest without shame. I will stop comparing my pace to others and honor my own timing. One sentence, one intention, one small act that says, God, I trust not only your plan, but your pace. Because when you know the season, you don't have to force fruit. You simply stay rooted and wait for the right time to bloom. 4. Faith over futility, anchored in a world that feels empty. The writer of Ecclesiastes doesn't avoid pain. He walks straight through it. He doesn't hide behind empty optimism or religious cliches. He speaks with brutal honesty about death, injustice, time, loneliness, and the ache of life that doesn't seem to add up. And yet, he never lets go of God, even in the middle of his questions. He keeps circling back to one truth. Without God, everything is meaningless. But with Him, everything has weight. This is the turning point. This is where despair becomes direction. You see, the problem isn't that life is hard. It's that without something greater to anchor us, even the good things lose meaning. Love fades. Pleasure grows dull. Achievements feel hollow. Time slips away. But when your soul is anchored in God, the same life that once felt random suddenly carries purpose. Not because circumstances change, but because your center does. Faith doesn't erase the chaos, but it gives you a place to stand inside of it. It doesn't make life easier. It makes it worth living, even when it's hard. Solomon doesn't pretend to understand everything. He admits he doesn't. But he makes this declaration near the end of the book. Fear God and keep His commandments, for this is the duty of all mankind. That's not legalism. It's clarity. It's the realization that without God, everything drifts. But with God, everything connects. Real-life application. Start your mornings differently. Not with a to-do list, not with scrolling, not even with asking God for things, but with stillness. And one simple, honest question. Lord, what do you want me to live for today? Not a big mission, not a dramatic purpose, just the next right thing, guided by His presence. When you ask that sincerely, you shift your focus. You move from chasing meaning to receiving it. Because faith is not about having all the answers. It's about trusting the one who holds them. Spiritual practice. Each morning this week, set aside 3 minutes, just 3. No fancy words. No pressure to feel anything. Just come as you are. Sit quietly, breathe slowly, and pray. God, I'm here. I don't need to understand everything. I just want to follow you today. Let that be enough. And if all you hear is silence, don't worry. Sometimes God doesn't speak loudly. He speaks by shifting your heart as you walk. Because faith isn't always about what you see. It's about who you trust when you can't see clearly. And when you root your life in Him, even the fog starts to feel holy. 5. The joy of simple things. Grateful for the gift of today. After all the searching, after all the questions about meaning, time, and eternity, Solomon returns to something beautifully simple. There is nothing better than to eat and drink and find joy in one's work. This, too, I see, is from the hand of God. That's it. No dramatic mission. No complicated purpose. Just this. Be present, be grateful, and enjoy the ordinary. At first glance, it feels underwhelming, like an anticlimax to a grand spiritual journey. But it's not. It's the final wisdom of a man who tasted every extreme and realized that what we often overlook is where God is quietly waiting. Not in the next big thing, not in the distant breakthrough, but in your next breath, your next meal, your next act of kindness, your next moment of stillness. Because joy isn't always loud. Sometimes it's soft and sacred. It looks like light streaming through a kitchen window, like warm food on a quiet evening, like laughter around a table, like honest work done with love, like a prayer whispered before sleep. Solomon isn't telling us to settle. He's telling us to see again, to wake up to the holiness of what we already have. Because life becomes heavy when we're always chasing something more. But life becomes holy when we finally notice what's already here. Real-life application. Instead of asking, "What's next?" ask, "What's now?" Instead of seeking what's impressive, look for what's beautifully enough. Today, don't rush through your routines. Be in them, fully. Notice the taste of your food, the feeling of clean water, the kindness of a stranger, the laughter of a child, the breath in your lungs. Each one is a reminder God is near and you are alive. Spiritual practice. Each evening this week, take 5 minutes before bed. Slow down, breathe, and write down 3 small things you're grateful for. Not the big milestones, just the little gifts, like the warmth of sunlight on your face, a good conversation, a quiet moment where your heart felt at peace, a verse that comforted you, a tear that helped you release. Let this become your sacred rhythm, your gentle training in noticing grace. Because gratitude is not about having more, it's about seeing clearer. And when you start to see God in the simple, you realize you don't need a grand moment to feel blessed. You just need eyes to see that today itself is a miracle. What Ecclesiastes truly gave us. You've just walked through a book that dared to say what most people are too afraid to admit, that life can feel empty, that success doesn't always satisfy, that even joy can be fleeting. But Ecclesiastes doesn't leave us in that emptiness. It calls us out of it. It whispers what your soul has always known. You were never meant to find meaning in the temporary. You were meant to anchor your life in the eternal. Solomon didn't write from weakness. He wrote from awakening. And he invites you to awaken too, to stop chasing wind, to stop numbing pain, to stop running from the questions, and start asking the one that matters. What am I truly living for? And does it last? You don't need to have it all figured out. You just need to stop building on what crumbles. God is not waiting for you at the end of your search. He's been walking beside you all along, in the silent seasons, in the restless nights, in the moments where nothing made sense. He was there, and he still is. So don't rush past this moment. Don't dismiss the ache. Let it lead you deeper, because the ache might be holy, and the emptiness might be a doorway. If you're still feeling hollow, if you've achieved much but your soul is tired, if something in you knows there must be more, then you're not alone. You're ready. Watch the next video. How Jesus taught us to handle worry, stillness, trust, and peace. Because you don't just need more answers. You need presence. You need stillness. You need Jesus. He is the meaning you were made for.